Hey everyone, welcome to this video review for Independence Day Resurgence. Resurgence, an increase or revival after a period of little activity, popularity, or occurrence. Because let's be honest, most of y'all didn't know what that meant. After 2 decades, we're finally getting a sequel to Independence Day. Now, was the wait worth it? If you asked me, I would say no. But to be fair, I was pretty excited to see this movie. In fact, I was looking forward to it for quite some time. Now, when this movie was first announced, I'll admit I wasn't that excited. But after I saw the trailer where London was kind of falling on its head, I thought this movie might be a great spectacle, if anything else. And while the movie does have some spectacle to it, it's really not enough to keep you entertained the whole way through. And even though they said Will Smith was not going to be in this movie, for those of you like me who thought Will Smith might have made a cameo in the end, let me tell you right now that what you heard is true. There is no Will Smith. In fact, within the first 10 to 15 minutes of the movie, they already established that he's dead. So, no Will Smith coming in to save the day on this one. Instead, we get a bunch of new characters who I could really care less for, but we get a lot of the old cast as well, which I did like. It's really cool that in a movie that took place 20 years ago that they were able to still get a lot of the original members for this one. But the return of the old characters and some of the spectacle that was kind of ruined in the trailers again is really the only good stuff I have to say for this movie. A lot of stuff in this movie just didn't work at all for the reasons I'm about to mention. Now, I'm not really going to pick the story or the plot apart because this movie was clearly not taking itself seriously enough for me to even bother doing that. To do so would be a waste of time. But what I will criticize is the execution of this movie and how they chose to go about it. These new characters are pretty much just new faces. It's not worth learning their names. They have no chemistry. They have very poor acting skills altogether. Like even Liam Hemsworth, who's been in a couple movies by now and who I know could do better, he's just kind of cashing a check in on this one. And this movie is exposition all the way through. This is like how not to use exposition in the movie 101. Like literally, they are so on the nose about how the characters are in their personalities and how they were developed that it's just like kind of hard to watch at times. For example, in the beginning of the movie, you have Liam Hemsworth and his friend who's top of the class kind of working on a project together, but then something kind of goes awry and they have to kind of evacuate. But Liam Hemsworth, being the reckless pilot that he is, that's also really good, ends up saving the day and he gets chewed out for it afterwards. And I'm just like, wow. Like, how on the nose do you have to be about this cliched archetype? And that's going on throughout the whole movie. Everything is just explained to you in the most obvious way ever. He literally watches a scene that explains an event that they were referring to throughout the first half of the movie to kind of just catch you up. Like, that's how lazy of an effort this is. It's just exposition heavy, cliched, and corny as hell. And it's kind of weird that they're promoting this idea that the world has kind of come together since the events of Independence Day 1, which makes sense. The world did come together to fight against the alien forces. But I like how, even though this is like a worldwide like unity thing, the only other country we see represented is China, which I can't help but think is for marketing purposes. But let me try not to get too skeptical here. Even though China is the biggest and only other partner in this movie, the main character, or the main character, who is the Chinese female lead, literally has only maybe two, three lines, and all she does throughout the whole movie is kind of look at the camera. So she's completely like wasted. I don't even know what's the purpose of her being there, honestly. And like I said, the spectacle kind of comes and goes in the first part and the latter part of the movie. But what really, really kills this movie for me is two things. The first one of which is the tone. The tone is completely inconsistent. Now, it's very clear from the beginning of the movie that it's not taking itself seriously, which is not a bad idea considering that, while the first Independence Day might have been a unique movie for its time, we've since seen many, many movies where aliens are coming down to Earth to destroy the planet. So the movie recognizes that it's not proposing anything new, and it knows that it's a sequel to its own self. So in that sense, it's kind of self-aware, and it's not trying to be too serious and trying to make like a plot that makes sense. It doesn't really go that route, which gives it a lot of flexibility, and that's not a problem for me. The problem for me is that it does it to the point that it comes across as lazy and careless. Like the line delivery is terrible, it's super cheesy and corny for no reason, from the way that the lines are delivered, from the shots that they make, from the editing. Everything is done to be over the top, I guess 80s, 90s cheesy, but just worse. Liam Hemsworth's character is like the worst character in the movie because throughout the whole movie, he's kind of just cracking jokes and making it seem like he's having the time of his life. And like even when the Earth is 2 minutes away from being destroyed, he's still over here with a smile on his face. It doesn't really kind of it takes the threat away from the movie when you have so many of these main characters fighting, but it doesn't feel like they're fighting for their lives, and it doesn't feel like their planet is really at stake. It feels like it's just another exercise or another training mission for them. He literally just spends 40% of the movie just kind of like make pretend flying and grunting like uh uh. He's clearly cashing it in for this one. Even Jeff Goldblum, what are you doing right now? His performance is so cheesy too, and it's just half-assed across the board. And a couple of the reasons why this kind of takes away from the movie is one, the movie seems to try to be doing some sort of service to the previous one by bringing back its old characters, but it's kind of hard since the old characters come back as parodies of themselves, and these new characters are kind of just jokes in and of themselves. It's also weird because at times the movie wants you to believe that the world is really in danger. Like they're giving it a whole countdown sequence where it's like 10 minutes to the world is destroyed, 2 minutes to the world is destroyed, but no one really seems to be paying close attention to that. So it takes away from the threat of the mission, it takes away from the stakes. There were a couple deaths in this movie. They even killed Vivica A. Fox, which I thought was kind of weird. First, Will Smith dies off screen, then they had to kill Vivica A. Fox, but somehow Jeff Goldblum's dad survives the whole movie. I'm not going to make any comments there. I'll leave that to you. But there's just no emotional depth or connection in this movie. Like nothing has any consequences or any weight to it. When Vivica A. Fox dies, the son is like upset for 30 seconds, and then after that, I'm pretty sure for the next 10 minutes of the movie, he forgets. So like the tone kind of takes away from the deaths in this movie. It takes away from the threats. It takes away from everything overall. And it's one thing if it was like good comedic relief, but it's not. It's not balanced at all, and it's over the top. And the reason why Will Smith worked in the first movie as comedic relief is not because he had funny lines exactly, but because Will Smith is just a funny actor by himself. So really, all he was doing was bringing his personality into the role, and he was able to genuinely act like a soldier fighting in a war to save the world, but still be funny because that's just who he is. In this movie, it feels like they were trying to be funny because of the lines, but it was just like poor execution across the board. Now, my second problem going into this movie was that the directors and the writers clearly thought that bigger is better. And it was for some part, because this new ship is apparently 3,000 miles wide, which is just large enough to park itself on Europe and North America and cover the whole Atlantic Ocean. Like, I feel like somebody Googled that fact, and then that's how big they made the ship. But the bigger is better only works for maybe one scene. And like I said, that scene is kind of ruined in the trailers. Besides that, it doesn't really work for this movie. It just kind of ruins the movie, actually. And I really hate comparing movies like this to the original because I feel like they're already facing an uphill battle as it is. But this movie leaves me no choice but to compare it to Independence Day. Now, the reason why the first one worked was because the genre was not very saturated at the time. In addition to that, it had pretty good effects for the time and pretty good effects if you still watch it today. The reason why the first movie worked was because of the scope of the threat. Like it was an actual global threat, and you felt that. The whole world was outnumbered, outmatched, outgunned, and we were basically straggling rebels together to try to fend off these aliens and save the whole world. And I like that in the first movie, the whole world kind of came together for this fight, and it wasn't clear that we were going to win. Like I said, we were clearly like outmatched in every single way, but we somehow came through and we pulled it off. And we had that iconic speech by President Whitmore at the time, and that movie also had comedic relief. And I knew it wasn't, and it didn't take itself too seriously then either, but it was still grounded enough for you to feel the tension during the final fight for you to cheer when they actually won. Like it felt like a real victory at the end of Independence Day when you watched that movie. Here, the reason why it doesn't work is because one, we already know the formula of the movie. We already know that they were going to fight the aliens, lose, and then come back and somehow win against all odds. We already knew that was going to happen. But for some reason, despite the audience in the movie knowing that, they still feel the need to give a large amount of exposition and downtime. Like, I think a good 70% of the movie is just people walking here, going there. There's a lot of talking and a lot of setup and a lot of planning in this movie, which isn't necessary because we already know the plot. All we needed from this movie was the same action pieces from the first one, but bigger and better. And it delivers on that part, but you have to sit through so much before you finally see it. There's also a couple elements that are missing. You don't have the whole worldwide fight thing. I mean, even though the new president is kind of addressing the whole world during this, you're kind of thinking to yourself, what's the point? I mean, you have one Chinese fighter. Besides that, it's really just America versus these aliens. So that whole worldwide aspect didn't work. I like how President Whitmore was trying to give a motivational speech in this movie, which wasn't nearly as good as the first one. And he was kind of giving that speech to like the service crew. Like he was basically giving that speech to the people that fueled the jets and to custodians. Like nobody who was actually a pilot fighter or an army fighter heard that speech. And I'm still not over the fact that this movie is coming out on June 24th. I mean, not even Independence Day. What's the point? And in addition of failing to kind of just be the first movie on steroids, rather than kind of skipping past all the talking and getting more of the big set pieces, this movie also fails to address some of the issues from the first movie. For example, how does destroying the mothership just suddenly cause all the other aliens and all the other ships to just kind of pack up and go? Like, that didn't make sense to me. Like literally, as soon as they destroyed the head alien or the queen of the hive, literally it's like they all just kind of packed up and went home. Like the ship itself didn't even just stay where it was. Like the ship itself picked itself up and just flew off into space. So that doesn't make any sense. This movie is basically like Star Wars Force Awakens worse, like annoying cousin, because this movie is also a sequel to a movie that came out decades ago. That's basically a rehash of the first movie, except Force Awakens did it in a way that was very entertaining, and this movie does it in a way that's not. And if it wasn't clear to you by the 1 hour 30-minute mark that this movie was a cash grab, they basically flat out tell you that Independence Day 3 is going to be a thing. Like there's going to be another one of these movies, except they're going into space because, why not? Also, there are probably no monuments left on Earth to even destroy, so that's probably why they have to go to a different planet now. Overall, this movie was really disappointing and really annoying. There was just lazy performances, poorly defined characters, again, things that really don't matter in a summer blockbuster movie, but the spectacle wasn't enough. It's 2 hours for no reason. There are way too many characters. I didn't even mention the assistant within this movie who's there specifically to be annoying, which is annoying in and of itself. This movie was a tonal mess. I don't even know what else to say about this movie. Don't watch this movie. Now, if you want to watch this movie, feel free to go right ahead. Just know what you're getting yourself into. Just know that it's going to be pure spectacle and a rehash of the first one. Don't go in thinking this is going to be like some next level, like world destruction, world's greatest comeback ever movie. Like, it's not going to be that. If you want to go kill 2 hours at the movies, go right ahead, because killing time is exactly what you're doing. I really don't know what it is with these Hemsworth. Like, outside of Avengers and Hunger Games, they're making some terrible movie choices. But on the other hand, Will Smith dodged the bullet on this one. So in the end, those are my thoughts on the movie. Overall, didn't really do it for me. But let me know what you guys think. If you saw it and you liked it, let me know. If you didn't, let me know. And be sure to give this video a like, give this a thumbs up, share this with your friends wherever you want to share it. And make sure you subscribe to my channel and check out my past videos. Since it's the summertime, I'm going to be making reviews all summer long. So stay tuned for that. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.